You can imagine what their desire was. I don't have their feedback yet, but a room full of 40 coaches that use that park on a routine basis, I know will give us great feedback. So with that, the concept that we have out now, we received 21 online responses and 35 hard copies, and I anticipate, I've only gotten one from the coaches so far. With 40 in the room, I know I'll get more from them as well. I hope I get y'all's responses today as well, or of course when it's convenient for you. So far, of the feedback we've gotten on the initial concept, for the most part, everybody likes what's there. We asked them what was important to you, and obviously the new recreation opportunities that are out there, baseball, improving the existing facilities that are there. Safety and lighting is a routine, and maintenance as well, routine feedback that we had. One of the big things that came out after the first concept, the public said that they want basketball in the park. But specifically, most said, we don't want outdoor basketball, we want an indoor facility. Outdoor basketball brings a crowd. We don't necessarily want it approach, we want an indoor facility. And so you'll see how we want to address that in our updated plan. Again, it's not on that back plan there, it is on the one you have in your hand. And again, I'll address that in more detail here in a minute. So, but again, almost all responses we've gotten after the first concept have been supportive of the initial plan that was out there. However, we've made tweaks, and I'll go through that. So I'm going to go through the concept real quick and kind of talk through the whys and whats of how we've gotten to this point. So first off, property acquisition. We see that on the east side of the park, there's a large tract of land. This is actually, the owner actually came by our office. I was doing a survey and saw the plan sitting in our lobby and said, hey, by the way, this land is for sale, and all y'all have to do is appraise it. I'm not going to fight real hard to sell it to you. So it is on the market, and it would be an expansion area for disc golf, which I'll get into here in a little bit. The other aspect, or other property we would recommend initial purchase for is to finish out the T-ball field. So those are two purchases that out of the gates we would recommend looking at for park expansion, and also to protect the park. But beyond that, you'll see on your plan in the more orangish or yellowish colors, buffer area. One of the things public said is they would like a buffer along the park to help protect for security and also aesthetics. Think of landscaping. It's no different, in my opinion, of what happened on the east side of 3rd Street when the soccer complex was built. I know the county came in, purchased property there along with some of the city already had to help keep that buffer from the park to help protect the integrity of the park. And so that's something else that we would also recommend moving forward. So the park expansion, those are the two opportunities we see there initially. And then again, here in the red box are the buffer opportunities that we see. And we think you could go further than that, but I'll show you kind of why that makes sense from a flood info standpoint in the park. I know it's hard to see, and my next image will show you even better, but FEMA right now has a floodplain, a floodway line that runs through the park in this area, whereas this lighter blue hatch is the floodplain. Well, the entire park is in the floodplain, which is what you do for parks. That's why we put the soccer complex. We recommend putting it where it is. It's what floodplains are good for. When the floods come, you get out, and when they recede, you come back in and play on, right? And then the one facility, and this is the basketball facility we had talked about, that could potentially be teamed up with learning centers, and then also the Park and Rec office, which is currently a trailer. It happens to be outside of the FEMA-regulated floodplain. The other thing is, just to think about, Stokes Beer does not have a gym currently. It'd be right across the street. And so it's just an opportunity for maybe some synergies in that area as well. But we were curious when you get to looking at the floodplain, how deep are we talking about? We all know when Approach Park floods, the bottom section almost goes under about once every 2 to 3 years, whereas the top section hardly ever goes underwater. And this basically tells you why in a colorful format. Basically, your yellows and reds and oranges are only a foot or two deep into the floodplain. So when a 100-year flood comes, it's showing you basically what are only going to be a foot or two, whereas your blues and your purples are 8 feet plus under the floodplain. So that kind of tells you when you're planning for the park, let's look for opportunities where you're going to set yourself up for your best success. So for instance, one of the recommendations we'll have is an AstroTurf field that can couple as a football field, a soccer field, and also 2 baseball fields. Where if you're going to do AstroTurf, don't put it deep under the floodplain. It's going to flood on a routine basis. Otherwise, it'll ruin your drainage system on your AstroTurf. We also recommend AstroTurf infields on your existing softball fields. But notice they're in the higher areas that will get less flooding, whereas the fields we'd recommend in the bottom are all going to be natural fields that, again, flood comes in, move back out, and you move on. So that kind of tells you some of the ideas that are going to drive, or some of the flooding concepts that are going to drive the ideas that we have. So I'm going to run through some of the improvements or recommendations that we have at this time on the plan. So first off, one of the things the public said over and over again, we need better curb appeal for the park. So when you come by, you want to know, one, obviously, you're at a park, but 2, what opportunities do you have? So one of the things we're recommending is on the train. Obviously, it looks like it's in jail right now. It's just a chain link fence. We recommend putting some windscreen on that fence, so it'll bring a little bit more curb appeal, maybe a welcome to the park, if you will, but also add some landscaping along the roadway, some signage and banners that say welcome to Probst Park, and or maybe you have a kid out there that's playing disc golf, or one's playing basketball, one's playing softball. It's going to drive the imagination of the kid when you're just driving down the street and say, hey, that's somewhere I want to be and go to. So, and so with that, that'll bring the curb appeal as you go along 182 into the park. So again, signage and banners, and then wayfinding as well. Right now, when you go by the park, you don't know if you're in Probst Park or not. So again, these are the banners that can inspire imagination throughout the park. You can have wayfinding when you come in the park. If you're not from here, where's field 10? Where's field 3? Where are the soccer fields? Where's the splash pad? And so that wayfinding will help you get around the park. And then also just to know that you've actually arrived is probably pretty important for the park as well. So wayfinding and helping your front entry is very important. The other thing right now that we heard over and over again, where the roads in Probst Park allow people to joyride through the park. It basically is not conducive for safety for people walking on the roadways. People are speeding through there. As y'all know, we have multiple speed humps throughout the park now. And so with that, we're recommending these light green areas where we're taking out existing roads, but then you can also see the series of coving that we have with the roadway system throughout the facility that's going to slow traffic down. You still have access, but you're going to have to go 20 miles an hour or less through these facilities. A lot of this area, especially in here, is going to be more like 5 miles an hour. And so you'll have raised crosswalks for pedestrians, so that crossing the street, getting from certain facilities is a lot more conducive to safety, and also traversing throughout the park, which currently does not exist. But with that, the other thing I wanted to mention is are the recommendations going to have enough parking? And so, it's a big concern. We did the soccer complex as well, right? And what we're finding basically with these spaces here, based on the codes that were required for all the facilities that are being recommended, 853 spaces are required. This current plan has 879 paved spaces in our current estimate with 100 grass overflow. So if you have that certain big event, you have additional parking on site on the facility to park your vehicle and get in and out of. So with that, we also are going to upgrade the entries. So when you come into some of the main entries in the park, it's no longer do you just fly down the hill or fly into one or different areas of the park. You have to stop, come into an area and make a decision left or right. And that's where that wayfinding comes back into play. The locals, once they get used to this new layout, they'll actually use intentionally the areas for entry that get them closest to the fields and facilities they're trying to go to first. So, so with that improved parking, one of the things that was noted is there's only 12 ADA spaces in the facility. They don't currently actually meet ADA standards, although they're provided. This plan would need 30 ADA facilities. And so with these upgrades, we would also locate all handicap accessibility to meet all codes throughout the park for all facilities that will be provided. The indoor spaces, another thing I mentioned earlier, is renovation. We have over $600,000 currently in the estimate to renovate the existing restrooms and concessions and facilities. And each one looks a little different. So, you have your activity center over here now that's just a metal building. And so while we may only put $40,000, $50,000 into that facility, remember it's deep in the floodplain. Whereas, back here in the softball complex right now, we have $150,000 in that facility. Remember, it's built up on stilts, but right now it doesn't meet the current need for that area, and it has everything, restrooms, concessions, and your press boxes in it as well. So when we do these facility upgrades, we would also provide shading with them that currently doesn't exist along many of these facilities. You have your tennis center upgrade, you have upgrades to your youth softball, and then you have the upgrade to your existing concession. And I'll talk more about this relationship here in a minute. So upgrading all these indoor spaces for better use, more welcoming use to the public is another recommendation we'll have. The recreational use, one of the things we heard over and again is baseball and softball are still important to this community, and they want to see the facilities brought up to daily usable grade, not necessarily tournament grade. Something Greg and I have talked about routinely is while these fields can host a tournament, we're not designing it for a tournament. I'm going to use the soccer complex as an example again. The heaviest use it gets is during recreational local use, not tournament use. So with that, we'll have similarities or conditions with baseball here as well. So what you have first, if y'all are familiar with where the Field of Dreams is, that is that there on the aerial. We would look to finish out this front wheel, which would gain Greg or Columbus Rec one more additional field. Currently, there's only 3 in that area, so we get 4 with this front wheel.
Then you would have upgrading the infields on the softball fields to a turf. The other thing that we've done, we're doing it in Starkville's plan right now, we would add tick marks in order to have futsal soccer. It's like a very smaller, intense soccer match, if you will, instead of on a big field. And what it does, it's better for agility and things of that nature. If you can't practice in the soccer complex, you can come out here and actually practice on these infields since they'll be turf. And then back here we have a multi-use field. It's something that I know a few councilmen and I went to Vicksburg. This is, again, where the old Sanderson pool was. So it's, if you can imagine the topography out there, this is up higher. It's higher out of the floodplain that I mentioned earlier. And here you would be able to host football games, soccer games. You could actually have 2 baseball fields on it as well, and you could use it year-round. So it'll get year-round use. We did have the public saying they would like to have something that would bring them out for all sports, besides just baseball, year-round as well. And originally, if you look on the back plan here, that multi-use field was here originally. And when we got to looking at the floodplain and the recommendations, or the request, I should say, for AstroTurf, that's why we moved it up the hill, if you will. And what that does is just open up for future fields for baseball or softball in this area. So, and then finally, I mentioned earlier, is to finish out the T-ball will as well with a purchase of that one additional, it's actually 3 properties with that one area to finish out that block. So, and then finally, this could be, again, softball or baseball field. It's currently designed out as a softball. It could go either way. Both of these fields, lengthwise, are 210 feet. So that keeps you in the recreation business from a baseball standpoint. And this is just pictures of, what the turf fields could look like, whether it be for the infield for softballs or on the multi-use field that would have football or soccer besides 2 baseball events. Multi-use facilities, one of the things, and these are all lower in the floodplain that we looked at, are areas where, while brother or sister are playing, the other brother, sister, or grandmother, grandfather, aunt, and uncle can go and do other things. So, this is a small amphitheater, not anything we're liking across the river, but where if you had an event where you wanted to do your award ceremony out there, y'all know how that hill sits behind that pavilion. So you had the covered pavilion, you had seating on the hill, and then just a small stage, if you will, to show in this back area. And then you have a trail that actually runs along the back of the parking and just through this natural area. We would propose to keep the trees in this area, upgrade the playground, and add some adult workout facilities that you'll see kind of what that looks like here in a minute. And then also a playground here for children. In this area, we're looking at a pavilion to eat. And so one of the things that's happening naturally at a lot of these parks are, you have your concessions, you can get your normal foods that you eat. But food trucks are obviously, y'all know, becoming a bigger and bigger thing. This little brow street here would allow food trucks to get off the main corridor, but come in and you can get your food from either source and eat in the middle in this courtyard with pavilion area, while in the meantime, traffic is traversing around the outside of the facility. So no one's ever having to walk across streets. And so that would become another event space that you could have for recreation and food services. And then with your renovation of your activity center, more formalized parking, new playground here, and this becomes a better area for reunions, family gatherings, school reunions, whatever it may be that you want to do. And so those 3 areas give you less sport-driven things and more things that the public can get into on a daily basis. These are just general pictures of ideas. Again, these general spaces could host movies on the lawn. And here I want to point out, I really like the way the lighting is in the background, going back to trying to make sure you feel safe. If you're going to watch a movie in the park, you want to make sure you have enough lighting to get to and from your vehicle. A petting zoo. The food trucks I already mentioned. That's an example of how that could be laid out. Of course, here we've laid it out more formally. Your stage, your amphitheater area to give awards and recognitions. And if y'all like me, growing up, you had your trash to treasures. And so, you can do a community garage sale, if you will. And I know growing up as a kid, my $5 would stretch really far. I probably won't today as much. But that's something else actually that was mentioned in some of our feedback, is people wanted to see events like that come back to the park to bring people back to the park. So the walking trails were in high demand. City Council actually approved us already, and we submitted last Tuesday a wildlife fishery and park grant for this mulch trail in this area, which is pretty much already there. It's a combination of broken up asphalt and gravel, but that's been submitted. It's a $150,000 grant. It's the same type grant the county just finished the trail and the soccer complex for. And so we've used the same grant to extend the Riverwalk a couple times as well. So it's a real grant that comes around annually through wildlife fishery and parks. This is a half-mile trail, as are these trails here, as are these trails here. And you won't be able to see it on the screen, but if you look on your page, we gave two other options where not only can you use these trails, but you can actually intertwine between a street connection inside the facility or an off-street inside connection, tying these trails together where you can actually run a 5K and never have to get off the street or on the street for that matter, depending on what you wanted to do. So you can have a full 5K, if not further, event inside the park itself based on these system of trails. You know, I would propose over time the combination of playgrounds and trails. You can continue to use that grant opportunity, which is an 80-20 grant, to continue to build on those for the community as well. And so this is just an example. Workout stations, y'all seen as the county did over and in the soccer complex. Some people are going to want to just park and get on the sidewalks that are off the back of parking, and that's provided in this plan that we have. Then I mentioned the marathon or the 5K events you could host, and these are actual pictures from Pro Park that we used in the grant application that was sent last week. So these are taken, if this rendering wasn't put on top, you'd see the broken trails that are out there, and you can see a car actually accessing down, probably fishing down on the Lux in this picture as well. So it would meander amongst the disc golf, but also the other users in the park. And so play equipment, well, I've already mentioned a little bit between upgrading the skate park, the splash pad, and the new playground facility. The splash pad and the playground would both be sports themed to kind of drive the imagination of children. And so right now it's PVC pipe that squirts out water. And while that's fun and it's wet and kids don't care, we think spending the time and the dime to give something that's a little bit better aesthetic and again stirs the imagination of children would be important. And so the train here is a playground that we would recommend putting in this area near the other train to help tie the two together. And then of course I mentioned earlier the playground over in the updated activity center area. So these are just more pictures of how that could look. You can have playgrounds from the biggest of kids to the smallest of kids and somewhere in between. And again, the skate park and the splash pad correlation or upgrades as well that we recommend. So fitness equipment, I've kind of talked about. Y'all seen again at the soccer complex what's out there. Along these trails, we would recommend adding those as you can. The bigger the dot, so to speak, the bigger expenditure you could have. And so this here, while maybe this is a fitness equipment for an adult, I can see my kids playing on this all day long as well. And so that's where we recommend where the current playground is, doing something of that nature. Whereas the other trails could either have one-offs that you have like currently in the soccer complex, or you could have just a padded system that's out there either way. So tennis and pickleball was actually mentioned in the initial survey feedback. There are 4 courts currently out there. We'd recommend renovating 2 of them. And then turning the other 2 into 6 pickleball courts, and that's how those would look there. So we've done these in several different communities, and almost all, we have some retirement centers we've done pickleball is all they wanted. They didn't want anything. So I myself haven't played it, but for those who are not familiar with pickleball, it's what I understand best for the youngest of ages to the oldest of ages. It just doesn't take as much effort, if you will. And then so the dog park, as y'all may know, the dog park is currently located on some of the highest and best ground in the park. And so it's where the old Sanderson pool was. How that decision came to be years ago, I'm not sure. We would recommend moving it just down the hill because of the reasons I stated earlier why we're locating the AstroTurf field here. And you would have a location for big dogs, small dogs, and also some agility references. So like here, or your small dog or your large dog parks. And so that can look in a variety of ways, but we would look to, again, have that located in the north of the park near the adult softball complex, and it would share that parking with the adult softball complex. Disc golf, there was obviously a big concern that, oh my goodness, disc golf is going away. They're taking over the park and they're going to fill it in with a whole bunch of other stuff. And this goes back to this land purchase here. And instead, if you picture Lake Lowndes and the disc golf course that's out there, you would actually have, and I've spoken with one of the disc golf players, and he said, no, technically we don't want to throw through this many people. I think it's a mutual thing. They don't want discs flying by their head, and they don't want to have to throw it around them either. So that's kind of like my golf game. I wouldn't trust people standing too close to me either. So with that, we would recommend using this natural area for disc golf so it would look more like this. These are some pictures that we've taken from Lake Lowndes and other facilities that we've done. See, the Lux access was important to folks, and as y'all may know right now, the Corps of Engineers actually has an access road that comes down along the creek. We would recommend formalizing that, and we can likely get grants through them to help both their access and public access, and giving a place for your canoe or your inner tube or whatever to be put in the water. I've actually floated the Lux twice myself. It was in college 20 years ago, but I've done it. It's doable. So, but with that, these are some facilities we built to get lake or creek access in the past where you can slide your boat down and walk down into the water itself. And then, well, I don't know who that is, but it'd be a fun opportunity that while it may be informal, I could also see groups that may want to come in as third parties and help run some type of canoe business out of there in the summertime on a part-time basis. And then something else that's come up in our feedback is we all know our friend Rufus Ward. And so historian Ward mentioned that there are some old fossil shark's teeth. They even mentioned a pterodactyl claw potentially, things that could be along the creek bank. Basically, he said those findings were there back when they straightened out the channel and rip-wrapped this corner. They were finding them left and right. Tupelo has a fossil park that's similar to this, and Rufus and I are going to get with George Phillips and actually try to get something more formal to, again, get some grants and try to get that park open so you can have an educational outdoor learning area potentially in the park in this area. And so again, you have parking for that potential learning area as well. So it's something neat that has been there for years, maybe just not highly utilized, and that access will bring. And then finally, I'll talk about a little, the basketball indoor gymnasium that could have learning facilities, that could have the park and rec office, and also the maintenance yard is in this area as well. And we would recommend moving it back to where the old skating rink was. It's kind of in the back of the park, and again, it helps to protect and provide that buffer. And this is, if y'all remember from the floodplain, this is the one corner of the park that you own that currently is not in the floodplain. So if you're going to put a building, that would be the most logical place to put it. If you ask what that shape is, that's actually the Boys and Girls Club. We took that aerial from 14th Avenue and dropped it in to show you that it does fit on the corner. If you also choose that type of facility, could fit there on the corner. So that's what that represents. So that's just another opportunity that's come up through public feedback, and it's been a very strong request. And so our next steps, we ask that between the coaches I mentioned earlier who have not gotten a whole lot of feedback from, y'all's feedback, anybody else with the public that may have that, please let us know. I mean, it's a plan, and as a good friend of mine said, you have to have a plan in order to be from it. But that's what this is all about, is try to get our best ideas on paper now and organized. So we'll finalize all these exhibits that go along with it, what they mean, the background to it, the cost estimates that go with it. And then finally, we'll put together what priority we see from the feedback and the needs of the park for programming. We'll put funding sources to it. As I mentioned, there's several grants. Obviously, y'all have some reoccurring funds through use funds and also your 2% tax that can go toward some of these improvements. And then finally, how to implement them, whether they be through applying routinely for grants and moving the plan forward. So right now, you say, Kevin, where are you at right now? On the estimates, we're around $25 million. But with that, half of that cost is paving and lighting. And so the other half are, I mentioned, $600,000 for renovating facilities, and then the rest of it are some of the athletic things that you see. And so, with half of your cost being in roadways, again, that's a use tax item you could potentially use. But what we would like to do is get the final feedback. I don't want to be presumptuous to present you a cost estimate and implementation plan, and I haven't gotten everybody's feedback. And so with that, we would like to get everything together as soon as possible and move that forward. Now, from all the feedback we've gotten so far and the needs of the park, that very front wheel and finishing it out is going to be, and I'll back up to what I'm talking about there. This wheel here is one of the first things that we have gotten heavy recommendations for, from a combination of bringing those facilities up to speed, but then also that's your front door, one of your front door welcoming items that would come down into the park, along with some of the road frontage items that we talked about. And so, to give you an example, though, of that cost, the fields, many of you at the city I've talked to for years, the fields alone are about a $2 million ad, whereas the parking is about $1.8 million. So you see right there, it gets expensive pretty quick, but again, half your costs are in the roadway and the lighting items come about. The other thing that's really up right now are the lighting systems for these facilities. So just for this facility alone, the field lighting system is about $900,000. It's a must-go lighting system. Same as in the soccer complex. They're nice. You get a 20-year warranty out of them, but they are expensive on the front end. So we can always value engineer these things down, but right now, from this planning standpoint, we would love to get your feedback. So with that, I'm going to pause and ask for any questions.
One of the things, too, that we've been discussing is, obviously, if we're going to go to a park like this, how do we maintain it? And how do we fund a parks and recreation program? If we're going to make big changes, as we do this, we have to think through how can we maintain it, and how can, as I said, keep it at the level that it needs to be. You've been talking with us a little bit about that, Kevin. What are some ideas there?
Yeah, so we have a third-party group that we work with in Gulfport, Hattiesburg, Charlotte, and we take the recreation, whether it's a one-off park like this would be, or there's entire recreation facilities, and we help put together an O&M plan for them.
they'll look at what Greg and I met with them probably 2 weeks ago, and they said, look, you know, if y'all are good with this, we'll come back and sit down and figure out what the staffing and funding and equipment current availabilities are. Cost of that. We can also look at it from a third-party standpoint or a combination of the two. And so for this park, it's something that they said they could do relatively quick and help basically give Greg the tools so that, let's just say that first wheel, if it's implemented, you may need X to annually set aside to maintain this front wheel. And so, of course, that would go along for the whole park. So as you decide what to implement and spend on the front end from a capital improvement standpoint, you'd also have that O&M cost that would come in the back end to help support the facility and keep it and maintain it where it should be.
So the first wheel is where we get started.
Based on everything feedback-wise I've had, that's where the desire is to get that additional field, which adds capacity, but also bring it up to a more tournament-grade field, if you will, with adequate parking, ADA, better access, and improve that front safety and the aesthetic as you enter the park.
So you guys can start on that and then still make changes as we go.
Absolutely.
As we get more into it, right?
Absolutely. You know, and it's one of those things when you're putting a cost estimate together, a playground, you can spend $50,000 or you can spend $500,000. A splash pad, you can spend $150,000 or you can spend $500,000. So what we're doing in our estimates, we're trying to give you something that makes it nice for where it is, what it is, why it is, without, you know, sometimes you get the numbers so big, you can say I'm walking, I'm not listening to that anymore. So I don't want to be so low also though that you're not proud of what's built when it's all said and done. So, you know, this is a plan and we're trying to give you some responsible numbers to move forward. And I'll say this, for the fields and the parking is going to give you a concrete parking lot. It's going to give you nice lighting like you see down in the soccer complex. It's going to be a limestone base. We could use clay gravel, which will help reduce costs. Right now, we're putting those costs together. We're making sure we're using quality products. The other thing is these estimates I'm having right now have a 15% contingency on it, but yet we're using prices we get today. So I've mentioned the Musco lighting. Again, for that front wheel, it's $2.1 million, 900,000 of that is the actual lighting before contingency. And so, you know, that's one of those, if y'all decided to go back and, for instance, the Field of Dreams, Light and Water put that lighting in-house, so pro bono. So I mean, those are the wide swings you can get when you start looking at working together. So, you know, whether a basketball gym is something that, you know, a school district wants to look at, or a boys and girls, you know, site number 2 wants to look at and cost share with, you know, again, all those are for future discussion. So when we give you these estimates, they're going to be good, middle of the road, get you a nice facility type estimates that we see from most other facilities that we're doing. So the pictures we show you, the cost estimates will be in line with those, so we don't build up expectations you can't meet financially.
I know you said we already applied for that. First, thank y'all for coming and meeting with us and putting this event together, Mayor. But I know you said we already discussed about the trail and put that in. That would be like a major, like, project to go ahead and start to show that something is going, you know, something is happening, because a lot of people, you know, the older we get, we always talk about getting healthy and walking, and then you got a lot of people, you know, that's in the city that may not able to go to the river walk or to these other areas. So, I mean, I feel like that would be a great start to let people see that we are attempting to, you know, do something to Prost Park, not just for one person, but for everybody to start on those walking. So what I was getting at, would that be just a grant for just one trail, or we could do multiple grants for each trail that we're trying to do?
Multiple grants, you're going to get one at a time. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those that each year you could apply for a new grant. Now, these grants are maximum $120,000 from the grant with a $30,000 match from whoever the applicant is. So you're doing $150,000, and they haven't changed that amount for years, and it's hard to do a whole lot with $150,000. Right. So right now, what we're proposing for this trail, while it is a half mile, we're proposing it 10 foot wide and being mulch. Why mulch? Because we can't afford concrete necessarily. But also, I think if you're going to provide a series of trails, let's make them different. Not everybody wants to walk on concrete. And mulch is much easier on the knees, to say the least. But with this also being in a flood-prone area, it's somewhere that, you know, long term, if you want it there, each flood is going to carry off that mulch. And so we have to continue to improve it. So the next year we may come back with another grant to hard surface part of it. So we may do a rubberized track at some point in time with one of them. So it just really depends on the funding needs. There are some other grant opportunities, and we can sit here and talk about Blue Cross Blue Shield, and there's other opportunities that are out there to partner with people that want to help daily active living. But the other thing I failed to mention, and Greg can tell you, you can pretty much set your watch every day by those who come to eat lunch at the park. And so one of the things we've scattered down throughout the park
are upgraded picnic facilities. And I can tell you the number we plugged in for that right now, $60,000. That's something really easy to do. Doesn't take a whole lot, but yet it'll bring more people to the park. So as you introduce some of these trails, you also introduce a place to stop and have a picnic on the weekend with your family, or if you just have an hour for lunch to run out there and sit. So, but with that, that's another opportunity I failed to mention. So, yes, ma'am.
This is beautiful. I haven't heard anything or seen anything on here about safety and security.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
people.
So first off, the increased lighting throughout the facility will bring a sense of safety. Then also by taking out some of these streets and coving, that will slow traffic down. So that's also a safety factor for the pedestrian, but also for the traveling public, if you will. One of the things that we've discussed is cameras that are being put throughout the city. Those cameras will be added to the park as well. And then also some of the entrances we discussed, especially on this west and northern side, at night potentially having gates to close those off and leaving the two main entrances onto 182 being the only two ways in and out. But also you could block off various areas throughout the park. But what this will do is, you can see this is an old street here that will eventually be, if you will, decommissioned. The drag strip that goes across the front, it's almost like a frontage road, will be decommissioned, so where your two entry points have more importance now when you pull in. And so by a combination of the coving of the roads, the increased lighting, and then also blocking off some of the entries at certain hours of the day, that will increase that safety.
But no patrolling or anyone,
Security office.
a security office that somebody, or if, let's say you happen to get mugged, there's nobody in there, you just have to call for downtown to come.
So that, yes, ma'am, there's a combination of things you can do there. So you can obviously have increased patrols by CPD. If the park found it fit, they could have their own patrol officer that will be dedicated just to the park. But you can also have emergency stations. Y'all probably seen them have the blue light on them to where if something were to happen, you can go pull that and it calls 911. Those are simple adds that can be added to the park for increased security as well. Yes, sir.
If there's some funding in blight, after somewhat of a blighted area, we could help the safety by removing some of those.
Yes, sir. If,
blighted-
you know, going back to, and this is gonna be early on, so I'll see if I can get there quick enough, but there are several houses, you can see this entire area, these blocks are all in the floodplain. Some of which are gonna be, 3-4 feet into the floodplain. Some are only, a foot or two, and most of them are built up. But George, you and I have been through these repetitive loss grants several times where we buy properties that routinely flood that are on FEMA's insurance. There's grants, 100% grants out there to buy those facilities. That would be something through those buffer areas and or elsewhere. The mayor and I have talked about an auditorium, if you could put that in some of these areas and build it up enough. But again, going back to your one high and dry area on this corner, any kind of facility you would build out there would need to be built up and out of the floodplain. But that area would be somewhere eligible for those type of grants.
All right, I'm going to try to keep us on track. We've got several topics we want to talk about, but does anybody have any more questions or comments? Or we don't want to cut it off, but we've got a couple of other topics. So please, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, just one.
Yes, sir.
Just one quick one, Kevin. I noticed you talked about the 182 corridor coming out there. We need to do something to enhance that coming in and going into the park. And I noticed you mentioned also about the school sitting right there, connecting with them for a gym or something possible. Is it feasible that we can have some area in this park representing our city school? In other words, our color is purple and gold, okay? And I go in other communities, I go in other states, I see McDonald's, I see Walmart is green in West Point, green wave. I see Dollar General is green wave. Can we reflect that in our parks so we can reflect our city schools?
100%, absolutely. They've already partnered with us in a couple other parks in town, so that precedent's already been set.
Good question. All right, Tripp, if you would, let's try to move into the ARPA fund area to discuss that. And I had wanted to give you a chance to speak first, if you'd like to say something from the county side of it, or
No, just,
come on.
I don't really have anything to say. I know that Leroy had requested that we meet together. I think it's a good idea, and I appreciate him offering that. I do think it's a good opportunity for us to get on the same page as far as whether we agree or not. We have some information that is flowing back and forth. about where we are. One of the concerns I have with the ARPA money, and I think I can't speak for everybody on our board, but I think one of the ones that was in general consensus would be, want to make sure that we're not double doing. So if we've got some synergies there, we don't want to spend money from county funds that could be spent by the state dollars, anything else. And of course, I think we all have the sentiment that we want to do what we can as far as leveraging the state match money if that's available. I would also say that we're getting pretty mixed messages from the House and the Senate on what that looks like. How do you bundle those up and get those requests to the legislature has been an issue. And so those are the same type things I think the city and the county both struggle with. So that's where some information I think could be very helpful from the two bodies as far as just sharing some information about how we're going to approach even requesting the match money. Yes, after tomorrow's meeting, we are going to talk about what our individual thoughts are regarding the ARPA money. Maybe set out some guidelines of how to approach that. We do know that we have received requests from rural water associations that equal, what was that, the latest number, $13 million? $14.9 million in rural water associations that have requested some ARPA money funding. Talked to Dr. Alsabrooks on Friday. He called me, their lagoon, looking at trying to get that on the industrial park water system. If there's any way we could do that, to me, I think that's probably a state-funded item. So those are the type things, we're going to be discussing, and just all of us come to the table to say, these are our priorities. Anybody want to add? Leroy,
this meeting was, there are some specific things, but I think more importantly is that we've got to get into our mindset that both bodies are here for the same purpose, to serve the people in this community. And I think sometimes we forget, we get into territorial turfs about what ours and what's theirs. The truth of the matter is we're all here for one reason, to make Lowndes County and Columbus better. And if we're going in different directions, certainly there's going to be a void. And whereas we may not always agree, I think that this has to be an ongoing process. If not, the entire two bodies select individuals who can come up with, if somebody were to say to the city or county, what is y'all's vision? We don't have one. Neither body. We just spend haphazardly. We do this, we're talking about recreation now. But if somebody said, what is the grandiose vision for the city and county moving 5 years, 10 years? I don't think we would have one. And so where there is no vision, people perish. And so that's my rationale, is not to say to the city, you ought to be doing this and vice versa, but to just basically say that we're all elected for the same people. Is the majority of my voters are in the city, and as with some others. I don't like to get into this, this city-county thing. We put our parts of the money and the services within the city, but I just think there are some things that at least collectively we can have a discussion. And I think what it does, it empowers the people in this community to see that at least we're having a dialogue. And, I've been around a long time. I've seen good boards and good city councils, and I've seen some not so good. And when it's not so good, it's problematic. Things fall through the crack. Lil John and other, education, parks and recreation, those are important things for our community. Law enforcement, that should have been one of the things on the agenda. Law enforcement, we have a litany of issues that we need to have a dialogue without trying to get over on anybody's turf. So that's the reason, yes, I wanted this meeting. But the other thing that seemingly nobody want to say, everybody's been talking about the ARPA money and what the county's going to do. I think today we need to say what we're going to do or not do. If we're not going to put money into watershed, when we leave out of here, we need to say that and not be angry. You know, we, as Tripp just say, we've got rural water systems that need help. We've got people living in the county with major sewer problems. Now, if it comes down to taking care of that versus watershed, naturally, I've got to be for those people living on those gravel roads who don't have a viable sewer system. Is you go on Motley Road, those people don't have access to a sewer system. They've been trying to buy Prairie Water's been trying to negotiate with the county schools. It's a difficult task. But I don't think we need to continue to hear and mislead people that the county's going to do this, the city's going to do this. We just need to put all hands on the table. Those things that we can work on, we're going to work on. Those things that's not going to happen, when we leave out of here today, we need to know that. And I think, Tripp, the county, and I know Jay and John and possibly Tripp, every Friday the Supervisors Association does a Zoom meeting. And they present us with legislation. And what they're telling us is when we met on Friday on the Zoom meeting, I asked for a copy of all the ARPA bills that's still pending, and they sent it out. The Senate bill says one thing, the House bill says one thing, and so as Tripp alluded to, we don't know what's going to happen. They are saying that it may very well be a special session, but that does not hinder us from trying to package up what we can. The Senate bills allows for utilities and rural water systems to put up money for their own match. You know, Jay has come up with kind of a concept that we may, and I like it in terms of how we may need to look at spending our money. But I think more importantly, we just need to, when we leave out here today, we need to have some understanding that this is what we are not going to do. This is what we can possibly do. And as we move on down the road, this is what we kind of want to do. And so that's very important to me. You know, my major issue personally is blight eradication. You know, I've talked to George a lot. And the reason is when those of us, the sheriff and the host, Greg, and a host of us was on the Crime Prevention Task Force, Pierre and Stephen, the revitalization of this community was real important. All during the campaign, all we ever heard, this is a dirty town. We've heard this over, and major concerns was trying to clean up this city for visual perception, but for not having people hiding in houses, all kind of stuff. And so that's what's important to me, but that doesn't mean there are not other things. And so I just want to be candid with each other, not argument. Let's put it all on the table and figure out what we can do. You know, I've got some ideas in terms of funding. We may not want to do that, but I'll mention that at the end.
What are y'all willing to help us with?
Me personally, right now, I'm not, and I want to, no reflection, I'm not interested in taking any county money for watershed project. Not that I don't think it's important. You know, I've looked at the map and I've talked with representatives from Wagner, and I recognize it's a major issue, but we have major issues as it relates to water and sewer. Now, again, I don't know, for me, the blight piece, you know, as far as recreation, we got our own piece we're looking at, a sportplex possibility. We'll get bids in when the end of the month, pretty much. So, you know, you asking me personally what I'm interested in is blight eradication. I'm not personally interested, me, Leroy Brooks, is not interested in putting any money into watershed until we can get a better feel for what the state's gonna do and what we're gonna do. We don't even know what we're gonna do. But I do wanna leave out here going on record saying, I'm personally not for putting money in watershed until we get some other things worked through.
And to bank on what Leroy said, personally myself, we've got places in the county that need cleaning up and lights too. And in fact, there's a couple out on Highway 50 and along with the trash up and down Highway 50 that we need to look at too in the county part. But
was blight product. And I think I've read in the paper where y'all may be willing to get 30% of, so if we gave 500,000, how much could we count on the county for? Whether it's a match or not, do you think that we can count on the county for?
I, for one, the blighted in the city helps all of us.
Right.
Helps the county, especially with crime. I've asked the sheriff over there several times, do you think this might help some blighted areas? So I'm certainly interested in looking at that. There are some issues, though, when you look at, all right, how does that funding mechanism work? Is there going to be an intergovernmental agreement? What are the functions that are going to make that happen, or how does it happen? How do we get some assurances that that money will actually be used in that particular area? I mean, are there going to be some clawbacks in there under a certain period of time if blighted areas aren't bought in you know, those are the type of issues. We don't trust that, but I mean, there has to be some deliverables in those, just like any contract would be. The time frame you do that, match money associated with blighted, there needs to be some outcomes with it. So, and I think that's reasonable to expect. So if we did that, I think I would be one of the ones saying, hey, we want to make sure there's either performance measures in there or some clawbacks in case those things don't happen within a certain time frame. But blighted areas is one of those things that I think we all benefit from. Another thing, this may not be an ARPA issue, is the mere fact that the city and the county, when they have to talk through the emergency radio system, has to go through the dispatch. That's a real problem. It's a real problem for both the city and the county because there could be some delays there. That could be a safety issue. Probably not an ARPA issue, but I think that's something that the city and the county, we really need to work together on. There's a fund there for the, the Ms. system. We need to figure out the best way we can do that to get some dollars there to upgrade the city system. You know, that was in the budget, I think, and it had to be taken out for obvious reasons. But there's some things in there that we could work together on and get some things done, but I think it behooves both of the entities to do that.
If we was to Trip, put together a joint committee, so you got someone there with watching every nickel, dime, and penny, everything going on, we got no problem with that.
Now, and we had the bones of that committee. We started that committee back up. It was before COVID, like right before COVID. Jeff and I met with Bill Gavin, Councilwoman Stewart. There's a couple others that we met, and it was a good meeting, and we picked the lowest hanging fruit. You know what that was? Something about the litter. Litter is awful.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yes, ma'am.
Have someone like litter out and just watch people, and when they throw that stuff out of their car, they get a ticket. Years ago, we had someone out of town.
The mayor had a conversation not too long ago about starting some initiatives with litter. I think that's something we can partner on because if you get into the schools, if you let the kids know that it's not good to litter, throw their litter out. It starts young, and if you can do something with that, I know a law enforcement person had kind of covert lights on his vehicle, and a lady at the stop sign right there in front of the little greenhouse picked up her whole plate of food and just stuck it outside the door and left it right there in the middle of the street. Well, he popped on his lights and pulled them over and made her walk a quarter mile back to go get that trash out of the street. But, But that's a problem. Litter is a problem.
They will not want to throw trash out if they think they're going to get.
Right, and that's one thing we're gonna be talking about more. We've got an initiative for picking up in the city that it's gonna be on April the 2nd, and each ward, and more information is coming out about that. And it's heavily led by volunteers. But what we're also looking at while we're doing that is working with the employees of the city to find ways to strengthen, our litter laws and our fines. We began talking about the possibility of an environmental court that other cities have had, where you kind of put some teeth into these things, but also getting the information out to folks about what the city and county will and can pick up and what they want, and where you can take, your large items that we can't pick up. I had somebody stop me yesterday about asking, they lived in the county and they weren't quite sure, they were talking about things on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I know that when they call on what the laws that we have in place, because over the years, at times we pick, we emergency situations, we pick up things and then we stop. So that's coming, and I promise you that is an that we have. If we jump back into ARPA.
But ARPA,
I'm sorry, Harry.
One of the things I was going to say about the watershed issue, and I speak for this entire board that I work for, but one of the things I can say is that I really don't have an interest in trying to leverage 5 million, 11 million into 100. I think that's a bridge too far. I understand you got to think outside of the box in that, but I'm not sure that that's where I want to go with that. Here we do that. If we do some matching money, need to be some interlocal agreements. I like the blighted thing because I think for the crime, but again, there'd be some clawbacks. Harry?
The county has a system where a building inspector goes to, it's a dilapidated or blocked house or something, and then we have a public hearing, and we ask the private owner of the property to clean the property up. And we give them a certain period of time in order to do that. And if they don't do that, then we clean it up ourselves, and we put the cost of whatever that is on their tax bill. Mm-hmm. Now, the city, from what I understand, has over 200 dilapidated houses or blighted houses. And I'd like to know what's being done with them. Are they asked? I mean, the laws are in place now to have those cleaned up. Mm-hmm. And it's the private property's responsibility to clean those up, and not necessarily the city or the county. And I don't understand why the city would like to go and buy that property and then clean it up and then turn around and sell it to somebody when there's already some sort of procedure to get it cleaned up. So that's how I think about dilapidated houses and so forth. Now, on the litter problem, the county, to how we do it, on state highways, we can't do that. It's not our responsibility, it's the state's responsibility. So evidently, somebody needs to tell the state they need to clean up their streets or highways. We can't come in the city and clean up the city's problems. That's not our responsibility. But in the county, on county roads, we have 2 litter vans, or vans, we call them litter vans, but we bought 2 vans. One is assigned west of the river and one's assigned east of the river. And we go with the justice court system, and we find folks that plus we've got 2 full-time employees, one on each van. But we go to the justice court and we ask those folks, the justice court judge, to either tell those people that fines, either pay a fine or go pick up litter. Most of the litter problems we have in the county, have been solved. Most of them. Now, I'm talking about on county roads. Now, I'm not talking about on Highway 50 or Highway 69 or whatever. Now, The problem is, there are a lot of roads, and we don't have, when it's 15 degrees outside, we're not gonna go out and pick up litter. The problem is that we don't have, our garbage truck, for example, that's where most of the litter's coming from. If the garbage truck's riding down the road and he's dumped his garbage in the back of that garbage truck and he's riding down the road, next thing you know, it's all blowing out. I think that we need to talk to those folks.
But there's a correction I need to make. Is that Harry spoke of the way we used to do it. We don't get community workers now. We got people hired on the vans. Is the other thing he said, as far as the city, we can't do it. We can legally if we choose to. Now, I think what needs to happen is if you go back to an intergovernmental relations committee, you hammer out some things that possibly could be done, such as is on any given Saturday when you have a litter cleanup and people put certain things on the right-of-way that can be picked up. That may be one of the things the county could come in and help haul the way. I think there is some potential if we choose to do it, and I don't think we're going to do it here today. The other thing is, and I know there's been some concerns about the handling of the money. Prior to being elected, I worked in the Office of Federal Programs for the city. That's what George Irby does. It is a system. It is a system where everything is documented. So if we go out and clean up Joe Mickens' lot, there's going to be a procedure on whether we bid it out or the city clean it, how much it's going to cost. Everything will be on an individual file. And so the documenting process is an easy one for that office, because I know what George does in that office, and I know the kind of things I did over the years. That is probably one of the easiest accountabilities that you have, because you're working lot by lot by lot. So I don't fear any major issue about the money. Now, Stephen, Harry alluded to that he may consider 30%. We never did, is that, but I think that all of the details, if we agree that we're going to put X number of dollars on the table, you work out all the details, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however, that both parties can be satisfied. Now, again, my thinking, and I've talked to George a lot, we talked a lot in the crime prevention thing, is not just dilapidated housing, but blighted areas. Just areas that's grown up. We have a lot of, and I'm not trying to preach for the city, it's just one of the things, I'd hate like hell, excuse my French, to think that me and the sheriff and all of us worked months and months and months on a crime prevention plan, and we got the opportunity to do something we don't, because it's like all our work has been in vain. And so I take it very personal in terms of cleaning up these lots. We have seen what happens. These kids and grown folks go up in these houses, they become drug havens. A lot of them don't have houses, but they're dirty. A lot of people don't live here. They don't live here. They're not going to come back. So this whole thing is you clean up the lot, is you're going to probably have some people say, we'll give you the lot. And so you've got some lots there, and this is the concept, that you then turn around and try and work with developers to build houses. Now, and I'm not speaking for the city, but this is a fact. If there's going to be growth, you're going to have to get more retail, or you're going to have to improve your housing stock. Okay, most of the people in the city and the core of the city are renters. So if a person can pay $500 for rent, there may be a program put together they could pay $500 for a house. So all of a sudden you're going from renting to buying, and that's some money over at City Hall. That's the kind of concept that I think needs to be thrashed out so the county and city and everybody can see it, because I think it's some misnomer in it. And again, yes, I'm pushing for it because I think it's important. Because when I go down north side, south side, East Columbus, it's dirty.
So can I speak to the comment Mr.
Yeah.
Sanders made about why we don't just push the house down and put a lien like they would for taxes, and if the owner doesn't pay it, then there's a tax sale. That's certainly what we're trying to do. We've been doing that for years. However, if we do that in the 16th section, where we have a renewable forever lease, the tax sale, if it goes unredeemed, will void the renewable forever provision of the 16th section, and therefore make it much more difficult to turn around and get it developed. So that's why, I mean, I get what you're saying. It certainly would be cheaper and maybe even smarter in the short run to push it over and put a lien. But in the long run, I think if it's in the 16th section, we're gonna have a problem.
I have a question. Would this program not fall under or have some help from Columbus Redevelopment Authority? They looked at, the Burns Bottom area, and, Leroy was talking about entire areas, communities that are blights.
I've done some work with the Columbus Redevelopment Authority, just from informational purposes, that sort of thing, and I think they're doing a really good job, but they're pretty much well tapped out with what they have bonded for now, and what their footprint is about what they can handle at this point.
I think that's fair statement.
So is the program modeled a way so we can see the cash flow and how it would work and forecast like how much property there is? I mean, I know we keep saying 250 houses in the city.
I think George has all that.
I think I can help expedite the portion on the blight program. And the reason, the question that you all are talking about is that they are valid, but we haven't done anything on trying to put together a plan until we had some idea that it was a doable project. So the way I think it can be expedited without putting numbers to it, 30% or 500,000, just say that we want the program, bring us back something with some teeth in it of the things that you all are talking about. I think that's a legitimate point. And the reason you don't have it because didn't know if it was going to happen, and you won't bring some people in to discuss something that they're saying why. So if you all could agree today, not with an amount, but that we will support it, I think all the questions that you are asking can be put together and given to you.
Well,
does that make sense?
I think we've made a motion already that we support
City
it.
Council already passed one.
Right.
From our standpoint, George, I can't tell you what's gonna happen until the vote is taken in that boardroom. Jeff?
And again, I've also talked to George and I've also talked to Leroy, and I'm totally in agreement that we do need to participate in this blighted house program. Now, what that's supposed to look like, again, as George stated earlier, he didn't come prepared with a specific number, and obviously our board hadn't really talked about any of our programs yet, and that's on board for tomorrow after our regular scheduled board meeting. We're having a workshop. So that's why I've said very little, because as a board, we hadn't talked at all.
That's right.
So I don't know what our program's gonna look like. So it's hard for me to come in here, other than say to everybody in this room, I support a blighted home, removing blighted houses. I support that inside the city limits. I live in the city, I'm a stakeholder. As a county, we're stakeholders. Everybody in this room is a stakeholder. So there's no getting out of saying you're responsible. You are responsible. Everybody in this room is here for a reason. We're responsible. Now, you can take whatever side of the turkey you want to say, this is my part, and I ain't gonna worry about nothing but that part, but I'm telling you, everybody in this room is responsible. So to walk around and talk about, well, we need to make sure funds are being taken care of, funds not being misused, funds are being placed where they're supposed to go, well, we got a accounting system in place to protect us from all of that. Right. So when we get through making all these excuses, bottom line is, and that's what they are, excuses. And I'm sick and tired of it.
Thank you.
We have a responsibility to the people inside this city and to the county. and we are playing games with each other, and it's time out for it. Now, that's in my opinion. I have one vote on the Board of Supervisors, and that vote going to go toward participating in some kind of project with the city to remove blighted housing. If the county has an equal problem, then the county needs to be developing a plan that addresses that problem as well. Stop passing the buck. We got an opportunity to do some things that we haven't been able to do at any other time since I've been on the board and most of you have been on the board. So let's work together. We didn't say how much that plan going to be. We didn't commit any particular dollar, but we need to commit to participating. I think if we don't do anything else, that's what George's looking for, is a commitment to participate.
And whatever amount it is, I mean, if there's contingencies on that money, then put contingencies on it, but at least give us a dollar amount that we'll know. You know, if you want to say, I have a concern about this, then make that a contingency that we talk about that, or we do a committee that we talk about that.
Have y'all committed a dollar amount?
Up to $1 million,
We said up to $1 million, or whatever the county would go, we would match it up to $1 million.
Okay.
So that's a dollar amount. If y'all gave $1 million, then we have $1 million on the board. If y'all gave 500, we have 500 on the board. So
I know
we're
Mr.
willing
Brooks
to work
stated
together,
that
you
we
know.
need to have some type of understanding when we leave here. So the number one thing that we do know is y'all will attempt to help with dilapidated blight. Everything else we still need to talk about.
Well, that, but Mayor, and I think it may be better that you all move back in the direction of an intergovernment relation committee, because there's a couple of things that, one of the things that we've both been approached about is the Burns Bottom redevelopment. You know, that's been an issue. I think that they've reached out to both bodies in terms of some funding. No decision has been made because we don't know. I understand they're trying to get money, but again, it's a project that makes good sense. That makes good sense. Is now how you pay for it, I don't know. The other thing is this litter, is that during the course of my tenure on the board, I've seen the inner workings of the city and county and doing certain things in the city. We have a lot of latitude of doing some things in the city if we choose to. We sent trucks over to help.
Well, the city is part of the county.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So my thing is, let's not say we're not going to do it or we can't do it. Is let's figure out how to do it and to what degree we can do it. I know everybody think the industrial park, we getting all industrial development, all the businesses in the industrial park. But here's the caveat. People are moving to other communities. So we're going to get all the plants and all that in the county and people move to other communities, that's still hurting us. We want people to move here. We don't want them to move to Starkville or West Point or something. So if the Lowndes County is going to put these incentives out there to get the plants, we want people to feel comfortable to live in Columbus. When you send a letter, you don't say Lowndes County, Mississippi. Your return address is 214 12th Street North, Columbus, Mississippi. So that's what I'm trying to promote, is how do we make this place a better place that people that want to stay here, that we can all be proud of it, not just the county, and again, been around a little while. And I know there are some things we can do if we come to the table wanting to do them and not come to the table that you all's got issues, we got issues. We are limited. We don't have a bottomless pit. Let me clear this up. Everybody think Lowndes County has a bottomless pit because we have hospital money. Jay and Laura them put us on a regulatory kind of thing. Now, if y'all want to do something different, we have limitations. We've got debt we've got to pay. And I know everybody think about the hospital money. It's sitting there. And here's the agreement, that we would never spend the principal, just the interest. Hell, the interest ain't doing too good right now. No. So we need to clear all that air, but I think if we are willing to sit down and work together, we can change the dynamics of our community. We can send the message that we are together. And I think it may need to be done in smaller groups, how we thrash some of this stuff out that we hadn't talked about today, is hopefully tomorrow when we meet and, we have some different ideas about ARPA money. We've got to work through that. You know what I'm saying? Is the legislature, I just was looking at the commercial dispatch, and they said that they may be calling a special session. And that's what we're being told, that if they can't get the personal income tax passed, things are not going to flow. We've got to do a better job reaching out to our legislative delegation too. They were looking at possibly an omnibus bill with different stuff in it. The county didn't say, look at putting, we got to do a better job of that interrelationship, that we can get everything that we can, whether you like the Biden administration or not. There's more money out there than we've ever seen. We got to figure out how to get some of that money, whether through Jackson, Washington, or whatever, for Columbus and Lowndes County. And I mean, that's my plea, is that we leave here collectively together.
Let me shed some light here to ease you guys' mind. Regardless, if we get any help, we're gonna do what we got to do in the city. If we don't get a dime from the county, we not here. We're gonna do what we have to do. We're gonna put up what we got to put up. I don't like hearing we're gonna put up this, you guys gonna put up this. We're gonna do what we need to do.
And as I
regardless,
said,
if you come on
and not to
board.
cut you off, Councilman, but as I stated earlier, we have a responsibility. I said we. I didn't say I didn't say you. I said we. Because that's what I feel. We have a responsibility. This can't be a territorial thing. This has to be a responsibility led by the leaders in this room. All is I and you need to be left at the door, front door. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. And if someone can tell me I'm wrong, I'll listen. But that's my opinion. The other thing is, as I stated earlier, Leroy's right. We can build all the large plants out in the industrial park that we choose to. But I remember when I came on this board in 2008, and we were meeting quite a bit with city and county officials over at the link. And one of our projects was litter. Litter was a real issue then. But you know what? Because we were trying so hard to recruit industry in here, we made it an issue. We talked about it. We went on television, we did ads, we did radio announcements. We did all the things that we can still do to let this community know we're displeased with the litter. And it made an impact. But somewhere along the line, we got away from that. We got away from policing our own community, holding ourselves accountable. Because if we do that, that means that we have to also suggest that we're not necessarily doing the best job we could be doing. I said we, and I'm still saying we. So why not? The playbook has already been written, and we played out of the playbook and been successful. So why do we have to come in here and they always try to change the playbook to fit what we want? I'm about whatever makes this community work. The only reason I ran for office because I wanted to make a positive difference. I think everybody in this room ran on that same idea, that they wanted to be a part of positive change. And to Brother Mickens' statement, I would hope that my colleagues, and I can't speak for them, I can only speak for myself, and I speak through my vote. My vote will be to support and work with the city on a project. We're not gonna leave here. I don't want the paper to read tomorrow that the city and county officials did not agree to work together and they left there with no plan of action going forward, because that's what it'll read. We ought to be able to leave here with a positive message that we can send to the people of the city of Columbus and Lowndes County that, you know what, while we hadn't determined the amount of money or what specific project, we have agreed that we're going to work together. And whether it be the blighted homes or the litter or something that we didn't even discuss, we have got to start working together. And that just, again, I apologize if it seems like I'm challenging my colleagues and I'm challenging adults, but I'm just telling you, I feel adamant about the fact that we have got to turn this thing around. We got an opportunity to be a part of something positive. We read negative stuff every day. Every day. So we need to turn, if we want the picture to change, we got to be a part of that process. Whatever that may be. I'm not saying what that is. I'm saying whatever that might be. Let's see, can we show that Lowndes County officials, city and county, I was somewhere over the weekend, this person was from Starville, he's a leader in Starville. He's a man I've been reading about county and city over here, man. What's going on? I said, nothing's going on. I said, we're in the process of transition. And once we get that transition accomplished, we're going to try to go forward. I want to be a part of going forward, gentlemen.
Mayor, I want to mention one other thing. Sheriff, and we hadn't talked, but Jeff, before the COVID, the black supervisors in 7 counties, we were meeting on a regular basis to just talk about issues. And so a few weeks ago, I was kind of coordinating. They reached out to me to pull it back together, and several of the counties met up at the community the other day, Sheriff. And the reason I keep saying you, because we talked about a lot of things, and the basic conversation was the discussion of crime, you know, and we'll be getting with you, you know, but you've got people and surround, they all got the same problem.
Yep.
You know, and so we're having this collaboration on how we can do something, youth development or whatever. But the other thing when I said about money, and this is something for you all to think about, it may not make any sense and may not even want to go down that road, but Starkville added an extra 1% onto their taxes just for their sporting plex. And I'm not saying we do that for recreation, but I certainly think that we need to have some interaction with the CVB. I don't know how much money they generate in a year. I did check with Lloyd. He said the last audit he had from the CVB was in 2019. We know that there is money coming out of the CVB. We know that there is an ARPA bill down there that will allow the CVBs to get money, probably a lot of money. But I think as a funding mechanism is just put on your thinking hat and see what would be the viability of an extra 1-cent tax. And I don't know what it would be used for next year, 2023. The county and city are going to have to get back together and ask for the private local on that. And I think that one of the things we can start doing is get some kind of cost estimate of what one extra penny, the kind of money it would generate, and see whether we want to do it. You know, we may get pushback and people say we're already paying enough. I don't know, but that's one option. And how you would earmark it, I don't know. You know, but that's an option that I know Starkville has used. One of the things that years ago, the CVB, when they were building that building, was it 10 years, I believe, wasn't it, Harry? They allowed that for 10 years when we was building that building, is before we had to go reapply. You know, and I know they don't like to give that length of time, but you know, there's nothing, if we get to a point that we could ask for, whether it be 5 years, 7 years, or whatever, say, look, here's a capital improvement project, is allow us to go before past the 4 years and kind of decide what it's going to be earmarked for. Is just thought, you know, you may say we got enough taxes on people and county may want to do jointly in terms of the money. So that was just something I wanted to throw out.
Because I heard it say 250 houses. I think Seco said it, and you may have mentioned you know, the amount of properties that we have, but it's not 250 houses. The majority it's going to be properties and houses. It's not structures on all of these houses. So just so y'all would know.
Yeah, and thanks for that. I was going to say it, but you know, you all sitting around the table, and some of us sitting out here watching and listening, and we are, you know, just citizens and hearing things. And you've been here for over about an hour or so. And I know somebody say, we don't want to leave here without doing something. But one thing you did, I will prepare something to present that answers all those questions. But you talked about watershed, and the county said what they didn't want to participate in. There is a way that the county can help on some of that, is something called special, what is it, Jeff? Optional sales tax. I understand each time it goes before the legislature, I understand that the supervisors are the one that are against it, because they're saying that there are people paying the sales tax that they don't benefit from. But if they could, if you all could help with that, and they pass that special option sales tax, community can do what you said and put a tax on drainage or whatever, and it'll be, but they won't allow that to happen. The other thing that I'm gonna mention that will never happen, but Hunter Ghost and I, once we worked on one system of government, no city council, no supervisor, be one system. And the reason that didn't work, because nobody wanted to relinquish the power, but we hear about everybody that wants to help the community overall. So I'm just mentioning it. I know it won't happen, but that's something to think about.
No, it's not gonna happen.
I've heard a couple of things about adding taxes here and adding taxes there. I think in a day's time, with the way gas prices are and inflation on food, I don't think anybody wants to add any more taxes to anything.
Well, let me just say this, jump in real quick. We're at the high noon hour. I want to keep everybody, let you know where we are on time. I don't want to rush anybody away because it's not easy to get this group together, and I'm very appreciative that you are all here. Being the rookie in the room as far as being a public servant here, I want to say this. I want to thank each and every one of you for what y'all have done over the years. It's not easy to decide to try to take on a job like this. It's not easy at all, but it's worthy, and I think it's necessary. As I stated in the beginning, the people sitting at this table are never going to fix all the issues in the city and the county. It's the citizens who get involved. I've said this more than once, but I'll say it again because I think it's kind of funny. When I decided to run for mayor, I had to get 50 signatures because I was running as an independent. The majority of the people that I went to get signatures had no idea what ward they lived in, didn't know who their councilman was, thought the supervisor was their councilman. And so what that told me is this: a lot of people are busy with their lives and they lose sight of what's going on in their own front yard and backyard. I've believed this my entire life. You know, I've never been in politics before, but I've studied it. And I think you can make a bigger difference at the local level than you can at the national or state level, because you're dealing with people where, you know, the rubber hits the road, or where your tires are going into potholes, or your trash isn't being picked up like it's supposed to, or your neighborhoods are dirty. And so, you know, as elected officials, it's easy for us to get defensive when somebody brings something up about our area or something that we're trying to do. What I'm hoping that we can do today and going forward, and I think this, look, no city council and no city and county get along. You find me one. I mean, it's going everywhere. I mean, there's very few people with their city and counties where they work together well. It's just kind of what politics is, I think. So we're not unique in that way at all. But what I'm hoping is, and I'm saying this to myself as I'm saying to everybody else, is that we can always remember that what we're here for, and y'all have mentioned it, is we're here for the citizens. I've had conversations with y'all individually. Supervisor Smith and I talked not long ago, and, you know, when this first ARPA money started coming out, you know, we were all scrambling trying to figure out how to do this, because this is probably once in a lifetime money. What I heard loud and clear when I went to my first MLA meeting, Mississippi Municipal League meeting down on the coast last summer, was from the Lieutenant Governor, was the cities, well, for us, we're getting about a little over 5 million. Y'all are getting 11 million. Y'all's came directly to you from the federal government. Ours came to us through the state because of the level. But he said loud and clear, municipalities, you need to become best friends with your county board of supervisors. Because if you're going to be, you know, we all came together back in November informally at City Hall and started talking about this. We have our we're going to advise us on this or anything, because we didn't know a lot, and we still don't know exactly how it's going to be spent. But what I will say is I'm still listening to what I heard today. I'm still saying that we are better together. And we've got a lot of serious issues that we need to face, but I think we need to stop and think about what are some of our biggest issues? Can we use this money uniquely for those issues that we can't for other projects? Where can we get other money for other projects? And that's not easy to do. And we've been moving pretty fast because of the time frame that we've been under with this ARPA money. But again, I will just say again what they have said over and over. This money should be transformational. You don't get it often. City Council, become best friends with your Board of Supervisors because you're going to do better with your money if you do that. So I will just leave by saying this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate every person in this room. We're not always going to agree. As I said earlier, we can disagree without being disagreeable, and I think that's what the citizens want. Columbus and Lowndes County are going to be successful when we work together as one. Are we always going to be able to sing Kumbaya? No, and we shouldn't. And you don't want groupthink. But what you do is you want to be respectful, and you want to keep what's best for the citizens at the forefront. And I don't know that I got this point out. What I was trying to say earlier when I was talking to Mr. Smith, I said, I don't ever want the supervisors to feel like they were insulted about an amount of money that the city might ask for. That's my job. I know that y'all don't have all the money in the world, but if we don't ask for it, that's the one thing you learn as a fundraiser. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And so don't always see what you read in the media as what's actually being said or done on our end of the table. Not taking a swipe at the media, they do fine jobs, but we need to communicate like this as much as we can. It's more difficult for me to communicate with, the council, because, we have to, when we're discussing things, it has to be in a meeting like this. So it's difficult, but I'm learning to try to, get as much feedback and information as I can to try to help us all move forward. And so again, I wanted to say just thank you all very much for taking time out of your day to be here today. I hope we can continue to have these kind of discussions. I know the citizens appreciate it. And is there anything else that anybody wants to say or do before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am.
Where I traveled, and I haven't been involved in the community as much. And now that I'm here all the time, yes, the trash is a problem. The dilapidated houses are certainly a problem. There's a lot of legal work that goes on in getting those straightened out. I understand that. But I have friends and family members who will not visit me here anymore because of the potholes in our roads and the crime. And they used to come at least once a month. They stayed in hotels here. We ate at restaurants here. Our city is really going downhill. It's already gone downhill, and I don't know what's going to happen. And my husband and I contemplated moving. We have a daughter that lives in Amory, and we go over there. There's no trash on the streets. We live back here behind the library. I live a block from Stephen, and sometimes there's so much trash. We go and pick it up, because we don't want to see it going up and down the avenues especially. And I call 911 when I see people throwing it out. And supervisors, y'all need to get it together because people are moving out of this city and not coming to this city. And I hate to see it happening.
Thank you. Well, we are trying, one of the things that we've talked about is that there's Columbus, a lot of the issues that we have, especially in crime and in litter and in potholes, are not unique to us. Now, I travel quite a bit, or used to especially, and I hit potholes everywhere and I see trash everywhere. You can drive from here to Starkville, and it's all over the highway, it's all over Starkville. Starkville has a lot of potholes. I've been bouncing in them. Aberdeen has trash. I mean, it's everywhere. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but there seems to be something about Columbus that people like to put that spin on us, that we're uniquely trashy, holes in the street. Well, we've got it here, and we've got room for improvement, no doubt about it. But I want to try to help change that narrative. if you look at the statistics, we're not that far off from what other cities and towns are facing now. That's not an excuse for us because I don't want to be those statistics. I want to be better. And so I agree with everything you said, and by working together, we can address those issues. And I think personally, it's like, you know, the days we live in right now, people are so busy and go so many different directions. Politics has gotten so nasty. I mean, the first election between Adams and Jefferson was not sweet. There was a lot of mudslinging between those two when they ran for president. But it has extensively gotten worse over time. That's why Washington and some of the others didn't think we should have political parties. Our government was designed to find compromise. And some of the best compromises that we've had in this country, in this state, and this city, is when those on the far extremes find a way to come together. Because usually, even if you feel like personally somebody's on an extreme, they've probably got a decent idea you need to kind of think about and bring together. What I'm seeing is, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it myself, when you're really passionate about something and you want to see a certain area moved, if the person that's talking is not saying the exact same thing you do, you begin to shut down. And you don't look at the other options. You hear the word tax. Leroy got brave enough to say that, and then of course that's gonna make everybody explode. But if you stop and you compare, people are telling me, I was in Starkville last week, I was invited over for an event. People that I saw in Starkville said, we come to Columbus to shop. There's no place to shop in Starkville. We come to Columbus to eat. And I'm like, really? I said, because everybody tells me they're coming over here. I actually met some people that moved here from Oxford the other day.
They don't want to live here.
Well, they shop here. They're brave enough to come shop here.
I'm a real estate agent, and there's not a lot of houses on the market, so a lot of people actually want to live here. We would have a lot of houses to see.
Yeah, well, Columbus, and I'll tell you, the market is much better here. I mean, you can get a lot more house, and the city is twice as charming. To my friends in Starkville, I love you over there, but you know, Columbus, again, we've got things to.
We're losing that. We're losing that. We are losing.
Yeah.
That's the stereotype.
Well, we've lost it. I mean, if you look at our population, it has dropped. But I really believe that we're not seeing things that other areas haven't seen. It's not unique to us. So instead of, what I'm hoping people will do is, instead of always, and I know it's not easy to focus on the negative, but look at the positive that we have here and try to keep lifting that up too.
When the garbage man goes down the street, picks up your garbage, throws it in the truck, if garbage falls out, they just keep going. They don't even bend over and pick it up. I'm out there every time garbage goes by in East Columbus, cleaning my lawn or out in the middle of the street.
Well, I will tell
That
you,
is
yes, ma'am.
as positive as you can get.
It is, well, and I will tell you this, and this will be a headline thing too, that, you know, there are folks that have looked at, you know, we've privatized our garbage pickup. There have been people who have looked at looking at numbers and looking at the types of trash trucks that you can buy now. There's a whole new level of sophistication as to whether it would be smart for the city to go back into that area and as a moneymaker for the city. You know, it's one of those things where you just really, and I'm glad you're bringing it to our attention. I pick it. A lot of those things don't change overnight, but I think we're trying to move in that direction.
Ma'am, it goes back to the caliber of people that work. Generation of people that may not have the same work ethic as some of us had, and we get blamed for it, and it's a problem everywhere. You know, they work 2 days and quit, or they won't do it. We're seeing it at the county. There was a time we never saw people leave. We'll see young people. We see it especially over at 911. It's the caliber, it's the time that we're living in, and I know the elected officials, we get blamed for it, but it's just the time we're living in, and what we have to do is put some parameters on what we're able to do. And one of the things I have to say to my constituents out in the county when they call for everything, government can't do everything.
No.
And they don't like to hear that, but we can't do everything. We're limited by law, we're limited by resources. So we're all better when the entire community works together. But I think one of the most important things we can do in a community is be positive about where we live. If the mayor said, let's change the narrative and talk about how great Columbus is with some problems rather than all the problems that we have. I think if we start, as my mom used to say to us when we was growing up, speak no evil about anybody. So I think if the community, we put in the motion that this is home. It's not all perfect, but this is home.
And you're right, and that's why she picked up the garbage, because it's home.
And that's what we've got to do.
We just need some support. That's it.
You know what? You really have everybody's support. This was really a good meeting.
Yeah, I think so too.
This was really a good meeting. I mean, the mayor says he has no problem in asking. We have no problem in saying no. Right. and the reason is not that his project is not a great project, but we've got some things we want to do. That's the whole thing is, this was look, I've been in meetings where it stopped short of chairs being thrown. So this is an excellent meeting between the mayor and city council and I think it disproves some of the conversation about we don't get along and the nature of politics is conflict and compromise. The same thing being married. It's conflict and compromise. So.
Give tickets for throwing trash out, and I guarantee you it won't happen.
So let me ask this question before we leave. Are y'all still using a firm to help y'all, the Horn firm to help with y'all?
Right.
Are y'all still gonna continue to use them since we've learned all these things about the ARPA money?
We're talking about the contract, but.
We're talking, we didn't approve it the other day, we're talking about it. Jay and Harry and Tripp feel pretty strong about it, that's the reason we want to put all the cards on the table so we can get a feel for their role.
So would it be best if we was to work with the same people?
I can't say that.
I mean, we got to get some understanding. Remember?
Well, no, we chose Horn because all of what we were looking at was not infrastructure. They came and did a presentation, and we're looking at a number of things. At the end of the day, Pierre, we don't know what it's going to be like, but when they did the presentation, they gave us such a broad perspective that if we choose to do some of these things, they can make them work.
And the reason why.
But I think on this board, you'll see our commitment, just like you see with the city council, committed to making sure we don't have some of these projects that overlap one another and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We'll work with whoever.
Yeah.
I mean, and if, again, I don't think you want us meddling in y'all's business as far as.
I mean, it seems like the only way y'all will help us if y'all are meddling in our business. So we just want.
We're not. No,
we're giving you the invitation to come meddle a little bit in our business.
Well, and I see Brian over there. Meddle is not a good word.
He's already written it down.
We are just looking at places that we can form collaboration and partnerships. We're not trying to get in y'all business, and certainly y'all not ours. We got our own issues. We don't always agree over there. That's the nature of politics.
But I will say this, Leroy. It's good that we openly sharing our concerns rather than go behind closed doors and say these different things. We're talking openly, and whether we agree or disagree, I think we're all on the same page. At the end of the day, we're all about serving the people. So how we get there, that's to be determined.
I talk better over steaks, Pierre, so next time we meet somebody.
Well, let's go down.
Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate it. Jamie Garrett is our new COO. Some of y'all have met her. We're very thrilled that she's here. She's been with us now for 2 weeks. She has recently found a place to live in town. Hopefully, we'll get moved in shortly, but she's been on the ground working hard. So.